Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Becomes Medical Prodigy? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Irika began explaining what chakra was to the class. Irika shouted at the nearly asleep platinum-haired student, Soto, ordering him to wake up before sending him to detention and warning that he would not hesitate. Irika used his infamous big-headed technique toward the sleepy student as a further threat. Soto yawned and told Irika that the lesson was boring, that it was only a review, and that they would learn about chakra properly in their third year. He added that they were only staying for a few days and then they would be out of the teacher's way. A vein pulsed on Irika's forehead as he sighed and tried to control his anger, forcing himself to ignore Sotaro and his equally lazy friend. He had been spending too much time with the Nara. Sotaro's Nara friend complained that sometimes Sotaro's laziness got on his nerves. Another classmate agreed and called Sotaro lazy. Sotaro shrugged and said that, unlike them, he had nothing to worry about. Irika slammed his fist on the desk, the noise filling the room, and demanded whether that answered his question. The class muttered that Sotaro was annoying. A scream of anger echoed through the village of Konoha. Some passers-by, including a few wandering shinobi, wondered where it came from but chose to ignore it. At a training ground, a child no older than 5 stood with a furious expression. Sun-kissed blonde hair framed cerulean eyes. He wore a white shirt with the Uzumaki swirl on the back, now streaked with dirt, gray trousers, and dark blue shinobi sandals. He was very angry. He stared at the orange-tinted sky as the sun began to set. It was the 10th of October, his older sibling's birthday was the next day. He had been born at midnight on the 11th. That had meant he was overlooked again. His older siblings, Menma and Narumi, treated him like something fragile, like he could never be equal to them beyond being their little brother. Narumi, the oldest of the triplets, claimed she was 3 minutes older than Menma. She had the family's red hair and her father's cerulean eyes, and she carried their mother's facial features. Menma, the middle child, was 3 minutes younger than Narumi and 15 minutes older than Naruto. He had a darker shade of their father's hair with red streaks and their mother's eyes. Narumi and Menma shared the tan skin they had inherited from their mother and the 3 whisker marks on their cheeks. Naruto was different from them in appearance and temperament. He resembled their father, but his eyes held a seriousness and maturity rare in a child. His skin was pale like his mother's. His nature was calm, analytical, and collected rather than loud and impulsive. Their parents had trained Narumi and Menma, leaving Naruto out with the excuse that the training was necessary for the older two to learn to control the 9 tails. He was intelligent, quicker, and sharper than his boisterous siblings, and he resented being consistently sidelined. He sighed and walked back to the clan compound. The mansion was quiet and empty. Today, of all days, felt like another reminder that he had been forgotten. His room was the smallest in the mansion and the only door without a carved design. Inside, the walls were plain white and shelves of organized books and scrolls lined the room. A study table faced an open window with a white curtain swaying in the breeze. The table held neat stacks of papers and notes. A wooden closet stood by the bed and a small private bathroom was tucked beside it. Naruto put on a pair of orange reading glasses and opened the book where he had left off. The piece lasted until his stomach growled. He closed the book, walked downstairs still thinking about the passages he had just read, and made his way to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and stared at the familiar contents. He loved ramen, but eating it every day felt limiting. He gathered ingredients and made a leafy salad. Balancing the bowl on his head, he used his chakra to keep it steady, then used chopsticks to eat a slice of tomato. He was training and learning at the same time. Halfway through his meal, the front door opened and his parents and siblings returned. Naruto quickly finished eating, washed his dishes, and then greeted them with a bow. His parents welcomed him back, and his siblings addressed him as their little brother in awkward, unsure tones. He acknowledged their greeting with a polite bow and then left the room. His mother called after him that she would cook dinner, but he replied that he had already eaten. Once Naruto had left the immediate area, Narumi and Menma began bickering about whose birthday it was and who was older by minutes. Menma protested angrily about being called little brother and insisted he was older by 3 minutes, and the argument escalated into a minor scuffle between the two. Their mother raised her voice and told them to stop. The siblings fell silent and promised in unison that it would not happen again, clearly concerned about their mother's reaction. Naruto watched their antics from a distance with mild fascination. He wondered whether he could adapt his mother's technique, her way of moving and commanding attention, into something useful for his own genjutsu. Whatever it was, he filed the observation away with the rest of his notes, regarding his family as childish but useful for study. 2 years later, Naruto sighed as he slipped into the house. In the living room were Tsunade and Jiraiya, along with many familiar faces, clan leaders, heirs, council members, close friends, and co-workers. He was about to open his bedroom door when Kushina appeared beside him holding a dark red kimono decorated with orange leaves and an orange sash. Kushina told him sternly that he was attending the party and handed Naruto the clothes before disappearing in a burst of movement. Naruto scowled inwardly. He begrudgingly took a shower, put on the kimono, fixed his appearance, and went downstairs. Many guests gave him odd looks, and some watched with curiosity. Kushina smiled warmly and said it was nice that he had joined them. Hibiki Haruno asked who he was. Minato introduced Naruto as their youngest child and patted his head, which only annoyed Naruto further. Naruto thought to himself that he rarely received any attention from these people and wondered why they suddenly cared now. Kushina added that he could be a bit antisocial and urged him to join the other children. Naruto bristled inwardly at being called antisocial but kept his expression neutral. He walked over to 2 kids at a table playing shogi. He recognized them instantly as a Nara and an Akimichi. The Nara made his move and, before the Akimichi could respond, Naruto placed a piece down and declared checkmate. The 2 kids stared in stunned silence. Shikamaru acknowledged that Naruto had managed to beat him and admitted he had overlooked an obvious opening. Naruto explained that it was his first time playing a Nara. He also mentioned that the 3rd Hokage and Asuma had a hard time beating him. Naruto introduced himself as Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and asked for their names. Shikamaru introduced himself and his friend Choji. Naruto asked if they could play again. An older voice interrupted to commend Naruto. Shikaku Nara, Shikamaru's father, introduced himself and observed Naruto for a moment. Naruto offered to play him. Shikaku raised an eyebrow and, with many guests watching curiously, agreed and sat down. Naruto focused, slammed his fist lightly on the table, and used chakra to make the shogi board spin. The pieces settled neatly in place, and the guests murmured in impressed surprise. Shikaku moved first. The others doubted Naruto could hold his own against the Nara leader, as his pieces appeared nearly cornered. After 30 minutes of intense play, Naruto met Shikaku's gaze, placed a piece, and called a draw. The room reacted with stunned disbelief at the 9-year-old's result against one of Konoha's most strategic minds. Shikaku laughed and praised him for playing well and for surprising him, then offered his hand in good sportsmanship. Naruto acknowledged the compliment and, with a curt nod, walked away politely. Later, heading upstairs to his room, Naruto sat on his bed and listened to the murmurs drifting up from downstairs. He changed into his pajamas and fell asleep. A year later, Naruto frowned, worried about the orientation scheduled for the next day and curious who would be on his team. He reflected on the identity he had adopted the previous year, a different name he used while under disguise. Flashback. Naruto had walked to his clan compound only to find it locked. The family changed the lock every month without explanation, and this was not the first time he had been shut out. Frustrated by the constant neglect and exclusion, he walked away and examined the seals on his wrist, storage seals that held important items and tools he might need if things went wrong. He decided to create a new identity to hide his original one and thought of a potion that could alter his chakra signature, though it carried great risk. He hurried to the small hideout he had discovered beneath Konoha's great library and worked on the potion. After preparing it, he went to the Forest of Death and found a rocky area where he could stage an incident. Naruto created a long-lasting clone infused with his chakra and used it to orchestrate a dramatic scene suggesting a fierce battle. He damaged the surroundings to make the scene convincing and left behind only a single wristband bearing the Uzumaki clan symbol to sell the illusion of someone having been harmed. Then he projected a scream that could be heard for miles. Naruto drank the potion. Pain surged through his body and his chakra coils, drawing the attention of the only person who had trained in the forest of death. He vanished in a body flicker after throwing a smoke bomb to mask his scent. He blacked out and woke hours later. He used funds taken from the Namikaze household to buy a small apartment and moved into it. He had registered his new identity earlier, so he did not have to worry about that. He went straight to the bathroom and stared at his new reflection, wide-eyed. His once sunny blonde hair had turned platinum and was now shaggy and a little messy, not pointing in every direction like a sea urchin. His cerulean eyes had become a frosty purple, and his skin had grown paler. He told himself that he really looked different now and that he would be Soter from then on. Naruto would be no more than his past. He said this darkly and turned away from the mirror. That had been a year ago. Soter was a teen known for being lazy, smart, and laid back at the academy. Despite that reputation, he had been named Rookie of the Year, much to the shock of his graduating class. He was the second orphan to graduate as Rookie of the Year, the fourth Hokage having been the first. Irika announced that Team 5 would be led by Kimiko Higurashi, with members Kikyo Akahana, Maki Kurama, and Sotaru raised a platinum brow and looked at his teammates. Maki was the female ninja of the year. She had short brunette hair and onyx black eyes, and she wore a dark green combat outfit with a white scarf bearing her clan symbol. A satchel was tied around her waist, a dagger holster rested on her left thigh, and she wore dark blue ninja sandals. Next was Kikyo Akahana, the dead last of the year. She was also an orphan, having lost her parents 3 years earlier on a mission. She had bright orange hair and mud-brown eyes, and she wore a black off-shoulder knee-length dress with white trim, a white hooded vest over it, black leggings, black ninja sandals, and a dagger pouch tied to her right thigh. Sotaru looked different from them. He wore a white shirt under a black hooded jacket with red frost designs and a red zipper, black Special Forces style pants, and black ninja shoes. He kept a satchel tied around his waist and 3 dagger holsters, 2 on the right, 1 on the left. Over everything he wore a gray long trench coat with black buttons, his hood up and gray fingerless gloves on his hands. His forehead protector was tied around his head, his bangs almost covering it. The door then opened to reveal a woman with green hair and onyx black eyes in a high-ranking ninja uniform. The woman instructed them to meet on the roof after lunchtime, and then she vanished. Sotaru sighed and stood up, heading to the cafeteria. As he walked the hallway, many students glanced his way and some fangirls squealed. He caught sight of Shikamaru Nara and they exchanged a nod of acknowledgement. Shikamaru greeted Sotaru and noted that he had finally become a junior ninja. Sotaru returned the greeting and mentioned to Choji that he could use some lunch before meeting his team and their teacher that afternoon. Choji shrugged and continued to eat his chips. The lunch line was short when they arrived. The trio got their meals and sat at a table in the middle of the cafeteria. They ate and enjoyed each other's company until a crowd entered. In the center were 2 red-haired twins with cerulean blue eyes and identical whisker marks on their cheeks, unmistakably from the Namikaze family, and a raven-haired boy with onyx eyes from the Uchiha clan. The 3 fixed their attention on Sotaru. Sotaru ignored the stares and continued talking with his friends until the noise in the cafeteria quieted and the 3 newcomers stood across from their table. Menma Uzumaki approached with an attempt at intimidation and announced his surprise that someone their age was already a junior ninja. Menma's greeting was met with a mingled reaction of envy and awe. Sotaru responded with a calm reminder that one should introduce themselves first, his expression impassive. A nearby fangirl asserted that Menma was the best because he was the village leader's son, while Ami, president of the Sotaru fan club, loudly declared that Sotaru was the best because he had graduated early, comparing him to a notable predecessor. Her supporters agreed in a chorus of admiration. Menma introduced himself as Menma Uzumaki Namikaze with a boastful flourish. Narumi followed, identifying herself as the older twin. The raven-haired boy gave his name as Sasuke Uchiha. Sotaru considered them for a moment and then offered his name simply as Sotaru. Menma teased him for giving only one name, so Tur replied with a cold glare that suggested there was nothing wrong with it. Narumi quickly changed the subject when another teammate called, reminding Menma that their teacher was waiting and they had little time left. So Tur nodded to Shikamaru and Choji and excused himself. He told the Namikaze twins and the Uchiha that it had been a pleasure to meet them before following his teammates up to the roof. Their teacher was leaning on the railing when they arrived. The three greeted her together. The teacher introduced herself as Kimiko Higurashi and listed her likes reading, sushi, vanilla pie, and sleeping, followed by dislikes, which she described as arrogance and anyone who harmed others without reason. She added that she enjoyed reading, sleeping, and teasing her friends, and admitted, with a wistful smile, that she hoped one day to have a romantic partner. Kikyo Akahana introduced herself next and explained that she enjoyed pranks, teasing people, training, and sleeping. She said she disliked mean or arrogant people and anyone who hurt others without reason. Her ambition was to become strong and rise to a higher-ranking interrogator role in the investigation department. Maki Kurama then introduced herself, saying she favored practicing illusion techniques, her family, and her little sister Yakumo, and that she liked cheesecake. Her dislikes included bitter and sour foods, and she aspired to become a well-known interrogator. Sotaru spoke next, saying that he enjoyed reading and learning. He added that he disliked being underestimated and that his hobbies included taking walks and reading. His personal goal was to prove that he was more than a nameless orphan. Kimiko explained that Team 5 would mostly be assigned to backup, infiltration, and interrogation tasks and that they would often work with Anko Mitarashi. She mentioned that, since several team members were interested in interrogation, she planned to sign them up for interrogation-related assignments once they passed the test. Sotaru asked for clarification, and Kimiko said it was essentially a junior ninja test. A commotion interrupted them as a senior ninja burst into the office of the village leader, announcing that someone had vandalized the memorial stones. Inside the office, several senior ninja were filing reports while looking out a window where three bright orange figures dashed across the village square, chased by a dozen dark-clad pursuers. Kimiko smirked and said that the colorful trio were her team and that they appeared to be doing well on the test. The village leader raised an eyebrow and asked why the memorial was being defaced. Kimiko explained that the exercise was an infiltration test. The team had been instructed to cause a ruckus while wearing bright colors and then evade capture. The goal was to practice stealth, persuasion during interrogation, and teamwork for backup scenarios. A bright orange smoke device went off in the village, intensifying the spectacle. The village leader acknowledged Kimiko's ingenuity but asked for less destruction next time and requested that the paint be removed from the memorial. Kimiko revealed that the paint was not real but an illusion technique that the Kurama clan specialized in, and the colored markings vanished like bubbles in the air. The senior ninja present remarked that the team had performed impressively, and Kimiko responded with pride in her students' success. Kimiko skipped toward the Hokage Tower, cheerfully announcing that Team 5 would be assigned D-rank missions until they received C ranks and telling the others to follow. The mission desk then assigned Team 5 their first task, to capture Tora the cat. The field team reported in, the potion specialist spotted the target, the painter announced readiness for departure, the extractor confirmed finding the target, and the archer reported positions, each stating they were 8 meters away and awaiting orders. When the commander gave the go-ahead, the three operatives moved in. Kikyo darted in front of the cat to startle it. Sotaru sent a couple of senbon, but the cat dodged and bolted toward the opposite side, where Maki was already waiting. Maki released an illusion that forced the cat to collapse to the ground. The team reported that Tora the cat had been successfully captured. The owner restrained the cat firmly and then loosened her hold as it tried to flee. Sotaru drew a long white ribbon from his pocket, channeled chakra into it, and used it like a whip to snare the animal. He wrapped the ribbon around the cat's legs and secured it with a neat bow. Sotaru noted how fast the cat had been as he watched it settle. The woman thanked the team and praised their junior ninja, taking the cat into her arms again. She then grabbed Sotaru in an exuberant, forceful hug of gratitude. Sotaru showed no emotion on his face, though his eyes betrayed annoyance and confusion. Sotaru said that he only caught the cat and did not understand the need for such physical contact. The woman waved his protest away, offered a reward for the capture, praised the genin, and then departed. Kikyo laughed at Sotaru's expression, mocking him for being surprised. Sotaru responded with a snort and a cool comment about class clowns acting foolishly and needing rescuing. The teasing escalated into heated insults. The team teacher Kimiko intervened and told them to knock it off, but the girls continued shouting until the squabble turned into a full brawl, a cloud of dust rising as fists and limbs flashed inside. Sotaru rolled his eyes at the chaos. He turned to the Hokage and apologized for the disturbance, explaining that they would be leaving to handle D-rank missions. He then performed a release sign and immobilized the brawling genin long enough to gather themselves. Sotaru instructed the teacher to start acting like an adult and reminded her that she had a junior team to look after. Kushina asked if Sotaru was always like that. Kimiko explained that Sotaru was an orphan and had once been close to Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. After Naruto's disappearance, Sotaru had gone cold. He used to search tirelessly but had eventually given up. Kikyo added that Naruto had not been seen at the academy or in the village for almost a year. Before anyone could process that information, the door opened. A child who resembled Minato but bore whisker-like marks on his face stepped in and looked at the occupants with an unreadable expression. He asked what everyone was staring at. Maki, suspicious, called him an imposter and dispelled the obvious illusion. Unknown to them, a subtler illusion remained in place beneath that one. When the surface illusion dropped, the figure standing there was a man wearing a swirled mask and a black cloak patterned with red clouds. Everyone took up defensive stances. The masked man laughed, taunting them for taking so long to notice. He spoke as if explaining that the missing child had been on an adventure and that he had been chased in the forest of death not long before. He claimed he possessed the Nine-Tails spirit and had no need for chakra, suggesting the child's chakra would return on its own in time and that the situation was useful for his own ends. He produced a familiar necklace that belonged to the first Hokage, within which a small illusionary flame danced, then vanished in a wisp of air. Minato and Kushina demanded to know what had been done to their son, but the masked man had already disappeared. Shock spread through the crowd, and the Hokage ordered the ANBU to search for Naruto at once. Sotaru watched the ensuing panic with a quiet, scornful amusement as villagers and shinobi ran and shouted the missing child's name. An ANBU captain approached Sotaru and told him that Naruto had been found and that the Hokage wished to see him. Sotaru followed the ANBU to the mortuary. Inside, relatives and fellow shinobi clustered in somber groups. The crowd parted respectfully as Sotaru walked through. When he reached the covered table, he looked toward the grieving family nearby, then, hands trembling, pulled the white blanket away. Under it lay a lifeless, badly damaged clone that Sotaru had made a year earlier, its features worn and unrecognizable from the time that had passed. Anger and sorrow tightened his hands into a fist. Sotaru turned his frustration on the Namikaze couple, questioning how long they had waited to discover the loss and pointing out that the missing child had been close to them. Kushina could only stammer that the body had been found that morning and that Sochi had been crushed under boulders. Sotaru accused them of failing to notice their son's disappearance, insisting they had been blind to favoritism and neglect. He argued vehemently that their youngest had been a prodigy and that their indifference had been unfair, adding that he, an orphan, had never known parental love. The argument left the room tense and raw. Sotaru exploded in anger, insisting that he had always been alone and had died alone. The room fell silent and everyone was speechless. Sotaru then scoffed at the village's claim of being the most perfect family, calling the idea a lie. Tension hung in the air. A week later, Sotaru followed his team to the Hokage's office for a C-rank mission. Yelling carried from inside, and when he opened the door everyone turned to look at him. The Hokage sat with several clan heads, heirs, council members, the two remaining sannin and advisors. Among the visitors were a silver-haired man in ornate royal clothes and a crown, a brunette woman in matching finery and a tiara, and a girl around the same age as the man, also in elegant garments and a tiara. Sotaru recognized them instantly as visiting royalty. Sotaru apologized awkwardly for his sudden intrusion and said he would leave. The woman declared that Sotaru was the perfect candidate for their search, and the silver-haired girl echoed the sentiment. Sotaru admitted that he was confused. Asuma raised a concern about sending an orphan fresh from the academy on an A or S-rank mission. Minato explained that they had few options. The only other person with silver hair was Hatake Kakashi, who was far beyond the age limit, while Sotaru's platinum blonde hair was close enough to the family trait the visitors sought. Menma protested loudly to his father, clearly upset. Minato continued, a ball would be held in the land of stars. The Lord Daimyo there had twins, and his son, who was to take his first dance with the daimyo's daughter, had fallen gravely ill. They were looking for someone who shared a trait that ran in the family and had asked the leaf to find a suitable match. Sotaru answered calmly that they were searching for someone who shared that trait. The silver-haired girl confirmed that he fit the description. She produced a golden scepter, and with a practiced flick the room was filled with white light. Sotaru's appearance shifted. His simple clothes were replaced by elegant royal garments and a white cloak. He stared at the reflection of himself in stunned silence. The woman chuckled that he looked perfect for a prince. Sotaru pointed out that he did not recall agreeing to this. Koharu sneered that he did not have a choice and that he would go whether he liked it or not. An awkward silence followed. The silver-haired girl introduced herself as Haim and announced that, for the mission, Sotaru's name would be Hoshi. They asked to be addressed as father and mother. Sotaru mentally groaned at the forced formality and ignored Haim's attempts at conversation, feeling the piercing stares of those around him. As the adults resumed their planning, the other children chatted among themselves. Sotaru remained apart. Haim urged him to stop brooding and to smile, saying her brother was friendly and always smiled. Sotaru replied that he would smile when he wanted to and preferred genuine expressions to forced ones. Haim dismissed him as gloomy, and the exchange devolved into a brief, youthful commotion. Sotaru sank down and picked up a book from the floor. The title, Aika Aika Paradise, revealed the author's name as his godfather. Curious, he flipped through it and, offended by its crude and disrespectful tone toward women, criticized the writing aloud. He urged the author to produce work that would inspire shinobi and civilians rather than rely on coarse sensationalism. Jiraiya reacted loudly, clearly wounded by the critique. The conversation escalated when Machi and Kikyo tried to quiet Sotaru and Kimiko moved to discipline him. In the ensuing flurry, a substitution technique was used and the intended blow struck Jiraiya instead. Kimiko admonished Sotaru to respect his elders, and Jiraiya protested dramatically as the room settled. Minato, the Hokage, asked if everyone was ready. Sotaru, adjusting the crown on his head, objected to being on the mission and made clear he had not agreed to it. Minato sighed and explained that there was no other available substitute. Sotaru groaned but accepted his role and climbed onto the white horse bearing his undercover name. He noticed ANBU guards and many clan heads with their heirs assembled, from Namikaze Uzumaki to Uchiha to Akimichi. With a reluctant breath, Sotaru produced a 3-inch thick book from a scroll titled How to Convert Poisons into Healing Potions. The ride was quiet aside from the children's bickering. When Sotaru spotted rare plants he wanted for his collection, he sometimes sent shadow clones to gather them. As dusk approached and the group remained some distance from the nearest town, they made camp without complaint from the royals. The camp fell into a tense silence when a scream pierced the air. Sotaru reacted instantly, scenting the atmosphere and sprinting toward the sound. He saw a snake nearby and threw a Sinban needle to immobilize it. He examined the situation and, alarmed by the bite, focused on the queen. Sotaru ordered everyone to move and pushed Minato back out of the way. He identified the snake as a coral snake and warned everyone to keep their distance. When an ANBU stepped forward, Sotaru used a quick scroll technique, touching the seal to summon vials and medical instruments in a swirl of smoke. He wrapped a cloth around the queen's arm to slow the spread of venom and began preparing a remedy, channeling medical chakra into a flask and heating a basin whose bottom glowed with seals. Kushina and Mikoto restrained the queen under Sotaru's direction. Sotaru formed chakra into a focused, green sphere and applied it near the queen's elbow, then set the sphere above the basin. He assessed the toxin and reported that it was far more potent than expected and was clinging to her circulation, multiplying quickly. When asked if he could help, Sotaru acknowledged the risk but affirmed he would do his best as a medic. He administered the potion he had prepared to stabilize the queen and then unsealed a metal table with straps. He instructed the attendants to place the queen on the table and secure her so she could not move. Soter changed into clean white medical garments and a face mask to concentrate on the procedure. Using a high-level medical technique, Sotaru established a chakra conduit between the queen and the basin to draw the venom away. His hands glowed as he carefully guided the toxin into the cleansing seal, channeling it into the basin. The process strained him. He called for a stabilizing pill, and Minato handed it over for him to swallow. Observers watched in worry and awe. The boy, a fresh genin who had just left the academy, was performing an advanced and dangerous medical ninjutsu more commonly taught to high jonin or ANBU. The technique was rare and risky when used on humans. After several tense minutes, the extraction completed. Soter took another pill and steadied himself before bandaging the queen's arm and unfastening the straps. He also tended to his own hands and wrapped them. He explained that although the operation had succeeded, the queen would likely remain unconscious for 2 to 3 days. Soter described the method he had used, calling it medic art, lifeline restoration, a high-level technique he had developed to draw poisons and harmful substances from a patient into a contained vessel for neutralization. He acknowledged its danger to both patient and caster and noted that while he had used it on forest animals before, this was his first successful application on a human. A shadow clone appeared to tidy the medical area as Soter moved to secure the snake that had caused the disturbance. He bound the creature with chakra string, retrieved the sunbon, and sealed it in a small glass containment vessel. After a few quick hand seals, his medical clothes shifted back into royal attire. As the adrenaline left him and exhaustion set in, his vision blurred and dark spots encroached on his sight. He lost consciousness as someone nearby shouted his name. A day later, Soter blacked out. The group moved at a slow pace with the ANBU more alert than before. When they stopped to rest for the night, Soter woke and immediately went to the queen's room in his lab coat. The clan heads and the Hokage were already there talking when he entered. Soter checked the queen's vitals, made a quick note on his clipboard, broke the seal on a vial taken from a scroll, inspected its contents, and resealed the rest of the scroll. He then approached the king. Soter presented the vial to the king and explained that the queen should wake the next day. Sotaru instructed the king to place a single drop of the vial into every drink the queen took, because he could not inject it directly while she was still healing. He explained that the substance would gradually repair cells that had been damaged by the venom. After bowing, Sotaru left. Sotaru then approached Minato and cleared his throat to gain attention. He adopted a professional, serious expression as he reported that clones had run tests on the royals in the nearby town and on the venom before he had blacked out, and that the results were troubling. Minato asked what the clones had found. Sotaru suggested they move to a private room to discuss it. Minato agreed. They moved to a sealed room. Minato placed chakra seals in the walls, floor, and ceiling. Sotaru set a white folder and his clipboard on the table. Minato read the folder and frowned, then handed the clipboard to Shikaku, who read the contents aloud. Sotaru explained that the clones had uncovered evidence in the DNA and in the potions indicating the presence of 2 hidden bloodline traits, including a blood release. He said the primary purpose of the venom appeared to be to trigger that bloodline by injuring the body so the trait would emerge and protect the host. Soter added that none of the royal family members tested positive for the bloodline. Neither the queen, the king, the princess, nor the prince, whose hair had shown a single silver strand on the crown the queen had given Soter. Fugaku asked who would pursue the bloodline and why they had never heard of such a Kekii Genkai before. Sotaru explained that some Kekii Genkai were passed down quietly within families for generations and then suddenly disappeared. Families often kept such traits secret and avoided using them in battle to prevent others from discovering them. Based on the pattern, Soter suspected Orochimaru might be interested. Orochimaru was known for experimenting on humans and seeking rare powers, so it would not be surprising if he were pursuing a bloodline like this. Hayashi asked how strong the bloodline was and what it did. Sotaru explained that, because it had not been used in battle, reports were sparse, but it was said to shield its bearer from poisons, viruses, and illness. Shikaku asked how Sotaru had extracted the venom. Sotaro muttered that he was beginning to dislike the Nara, prompting Shibi to ask for clarification. Sotaro replied that his own blood was no longer normal. He explained that although he did not possess the bloodline himself, his blood had become dangerous, poisonous, and corrosive while not granting the blood release. To demonstrate, he took a kunai and pricked his finger. Instead of red, a black liquid came out. It hissed and smoked at the edges of the drops and corroded a small hole into the wooden table. Sotaro then healed the small wound. Shikaku observed that this explained why Sotaro had studied medical ninjutsu, to find a way to stabilize his blood. Sotaro shook his head and explained that the change had been an accident. While traveling to the sand to meet a friend, he had encountered Sasori of the red sand and been injected with a poison that would likely have been fatal. In his attempts to counteract the poison, he had used the wrong vials and experimented on himself. He had survived and become immune to some poisons, but at the price of his blood becoming corrosive. Minato dismissed him for the time being. Sotaro bowed, gathered his folder and clipboard, and left in a flash of broken glass shards. The clan heads consulted and reached a decision. Shikaku announced that Sotaro would be promoted to Chunin without taking the exams so he could teach medics in the hospitals about medical ninjutsu should a similar crisis arise. The other clan heads agreed. Fugaku remarked that Sotaro was a prodigy who had been held back because of his orphan status, and the others nodded in agreement. The majority decision stood. Sotaro was given the rank of Chunin without the usual exams. Sotaro felt the weight of constant stares in the days that followed. Now wearing the standard Chunin uniform and assigned his first B-rank mission to guard the clan heirs, he attracted both attention and resentment. Menma shouted that Sotaro's promotion did not make him better than anyone else and warned him not to act high and mighty. Shikamaru explained that Sotaro was 2 ranks above them at the same age, had been promoted without taking the Chunin exams, and was the first to receive such a promotion in the Hidden Leaf. He noted that even Itachi Uchiha and the Sannin had gone through the exams. Shikamaru made the point while moving a shogi piece. Menma insisted he was better than Sotaro. Sotaro smiled and declared victory in the game they were playing. Shikamaru scanned the board, shook his head, and told Menma that he was not better. Sasuke interjected that if someone could not beat Shikamaru in a simple shogi game, they certainly could not beat Sotaro, the one who had defeated him. A voice demanded to know whose side anyone was on, and Sasuke responded that he was on no one's side. The constant complaining had become annoying, and even if someone had been trained by the Hokage, Sotaro was superior. Kiba expressed surprise that Sasuke would accept defeat. Narumi added that it made sense Sotaro had achieved what even Itachi Uchiha had not and had been called the prodigy of all prodigies. Narumi was not surprised if Sotaro tried out for the Jonin exams that year. A small explosion cut the conversation short. Sotaro immediately gathered the clan heirs and took a fighting stance in front of them, ordering them to stay out of it and not interfere because they were only academy students and clan heirs. Some tried to object, but Shikamaru agreed with Sotaro and warned that they would only get in the way. The children fell silent. Orochimaru emerged from the smoke. Sotaro positioned a kunai in front of himself and glared. Orochimaru eyed him and sibilantly mocked that the boy had saved the queen and uncovered his intentions, noting that it was curious for a clanless orphan to possess abilities that surpassed his superiors and that he remembered the child who had survived a deadly poison. Orochimaru then tempted the boy with the promise of power. Sotaro refused the offer of power and the cursed mark. He said that he only needed to work hard and climb the ranks through his own effort. He would not become Orochimaru's vessel. He channeled chakra into his kunai and hurled it into the ground, then launched himself at Orochimaru. His chakra blade glowed purple, a fusion of his unique energy. They clashed fiercely. Orochimaru parried with the Kusanagi, the 2 weapons meeting in a storm of sparks. Minato intervened with a Rasengan, and Orochimaru acknowledged his arrival with a taunt that one of the clan heirs would die. Sotaro turned and saw a mud clone ready to strike Sasuke. He rushed to push Sasuke out of the way and took the blow meant for him. The Kusanagi struck him and he fell, gravely wounded. He fought on, sending a burst of chakra at the clone that forced it to recoil and caused Orochimaru's constructs to dissipate. Sotaro pressed his glowing hand to his chest and struggled to stabilize himself. Minato warned everyone to stay back and avoid contact with whatever had affected Sotaro, then crouched at the edge of the scene. Sotaro managed to form hand seals through ragged breath and created a clone. The clone grabbed Minato and the Frozen Clan heirs and pushed them through. A mirror technique, sending them out of the danger. They fell out of the building to safety with the others. The original Sotaro remained behind, gravely wounded. Before he vanished, the clone revealed that his true name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and offered a brief apology to his father. The clone then disappeared. Everyone stared at the spot where the clone had been, wide-eyed and stunned. Minato's tears fell as he took in the ruined building. Kushina cried out loudly, joined by the twins. Shikamaru remarked sadly that it made sense the clone's tactics in shogi had been a clear sign. Someone else observed that Sotaro deserved to be listed as Kia, since he had completed his mission. The survivors gathered in silence, processing the loss and the echo of what had happened. 3 years later, Chunin exams. Orochimaru sneered at Minato and Hiruzen as he slipped through their attacks with serpentine ease. He performed his summoning and called forth 3 coffins. Minato and Hiruzen stopped as they watched 2 wooden coffins and a black one bearing the label weapon. The kanji for first and second Hokage were carved into the wooden coffins, and the first 2 Hokage emerged from them. Hashirama blinked and looked around, surprised and disoriented, commenting that Sarutobi looked older. Tobirama told his older brother to be quiet and explained that they had been summoned by an Edo Tensei jutsu. Minato identified himself as the 4th Hokage when the summoned shinobi asked who he was. A rumbling from the last coffin drew their attention. The lid fell away and a small silhouette crawled out and revealed a 13-year-old boy wearing a white yukata with a dark blue undershirt and linings, ocean blue pants, dark sandals, and a purple sash. His frosty white hair seemed almost silver in the sun and his pale blue eyes were striking. Minato recognized him instantly as his presumed dead youngest son and felt anger building in his chest. Minato accused Orochimaru of turning his son into a weapon and reacted with outrage. Orochimaru replied that he could not waste such a prodigy and, since he could not possess the boy's body directly, he would force him to serve as weapon Sotaro and ordered the boy to kill the 4th Hokage. Sotaro responded without emotion, accepting Orochimaru's command and stamping the ground. Ice spikes shot up around him. Orochimaru urged the boy not to hold back. Sotaro charged forward and formed an ice barrier to deflect kunai. Hiruzen growled in anger at Orochimaru for forcing a father to fight his own son and moved to intervene, but the 1st and 2nd Hokage blocked him. Minato shouted for Enarsoro to snap out of it and declared that he knew the boy could hear him, insisting that he was not a puppet. Sotaro said he could not disobey his master and that he did not want to kill, but he had no choice. Minato pleaded that he would free him. Sotaro answered simply that he could not leave until his friends in the lair were safe from Orochimaru's influence, and he asked the 4th to help them as well. Determined, Minato teleported behind Sotaro and struck with a Rasengan strong enough to knock him unconscious. As Minato reached to pick him up, Sotaro vanished back into the black coffin. Orochimaru threatened to punish weapon Sotaro for failing. Minato reacted with furious intent to kill Orochimaru, and Hiruzen attempted to seal the snake away with the Shinigami ritual. Orochimaru slipped free and escaped. The 3rd Hokage lay motionless on the ground and Anbu moved in to carry him away. Minato barked orders for the Konoha 12, their senseis, Team 5, and Anbu Squads 1, 2, and 3 to assemble in his office immediately, and he demanded that Kakashi be told he would be reduced to D-rank missions if he was late. An ANBU acknowledged and left at once. Minato returned to his office, sat, and released a frustrated sigh. When the ANBU squad gathered there, he assigned them an infiltration mission. He explained that it was an S-rank operation to strike one of Orochimaru's bases near Otogakure and that he would accompany them. A few Chunin would join to rescue the experiments held there. Their orders were to handle any opponents who actively resisted but not to engage Orochimaru himself, because Minato intended to confront the snake. Anbu exchanged looks and nodded. Itachi was surprised at the rare anger in the 4th's voice. They prepared to depart in an hour. A tired team entered Minato's office. Since the Sotaro incident 3 years prior, the next generation had trained hard and worked together, and most had passed the preliminary exams. Minato addressed them, reminding them of the incident that had marked their lives. When some asked what he meant, others explained that they had lost a teammate, the orphan prodigy Soto, who had been believed dead. A subdued mood fell over Team Minato, revealed that he had discovered Sotaro alive and encountered him earlier, learning that many others had been held by Orochimaru. This mission would be their first high-level assignment since their promotion to Chunin, possibly reaching lower S-rank difficulty. Their objective was to rescue those willing to be rescued and to avoid engaging those whom Orochimaru had turned against them. Most importantly, they were to find Minato's son and bring him home. Menma and Narumi spoke together that they would bring their younger brother back, which renewed resolve in the team. A soft blue glow appeared on the table and an ice fox formed, speaking with Sotaro's calm voice to warn them that they would be moving bases in 5 hours and that it would lead them to the hideout. Minato reiterated the departure time and warned Kakashi not to be late. The Jonin acknowledged the order. They learned quickly that the fox was very fast. In just minutes it slipped from their sight, leaving only a patch of ice on a branch as a clue. The fox sat on another branch until it suddenly exploded into a scattering of ice and snow, allowing the team to proceed as planned. Minato assured his son silently that he would be there. Sotaro lay strapped to a metal table, breathing heavily as a toxin continued to affect him. Kabuto sneered at him for a moment before an explosion shook the base, and Kabuto left the room, leaving the pale-eyed boy alone. Sotaro coughed, though he did not struggle against his restraints. The door burst open and he saw the familiar weasel mask of an ANB. Itachi untied him, helped him into a dark blue undershirt, and draped a white robe around the petite, silver-haired boy before lifting him into his arms and carrying him out of the room. Sotaro thanked Itachi and asked to be called Sotaro. Itachi explained that he owed a debt for the rescue of his brother and was simply returning the favor, and then turned away from the fighting to leave. The mission was over, but Orochimaru had escaped again. No other test subjects had been saved, the others were dead. Sotaro knelt and wept before the body of a 19-year-old with silver hair, the same hair as his own. He berated the fallen man, reminding him of the promise that he would not die yet, and frost began to spread across the ground where he knelt. Minato approached and apologized, saying they had to bury him now. Sotaro refused and insisted that he would do it himself. He picked up a small crystal on the ground that had formed from his tears, one of Orochimaru's experiments, and began to work. Sotaro performed an ice-style body preservation technique, channeling chakra as his hands moved through the seals and his body glowed blue. He touched the chest of Sora and allowed ice to spread until Sora was encased in a block of ice. Then Sotaro used a crystal entrapment technique, throwing the tear-made crystal into the air and touching the ice block so that blue light swirled and the frozen form was drawn into the crystal. The crystal landed in Sotaro's palm, glowing with a blue light. The others watched in awe as Sotaro produced a small bottle with a silver chain. It was half filled with tiny, glittering stones. He uncorked the bottle, placed the crystal containing Sora inside, sealed it, and put the chain around his neck. The bottle transformed into a pendant shaped like a snowflake, shimmering against his chest. After that, Sotaro collapsed. Minato flashed forward and caught his son. Minato declared the mission a success as he looked at Sotaro with sad eyes. A month later, Sotaro had settled back at the Uzumaki Namikaze compound. He refused to be called Naruto. The name felt foreign to him now. When Minato told the village of this, people were surprised, but once Sotaro explained what the potion and the events would do, they accepted it. Sotaro returned to the Jonin exam despite Kushina's initial protests. He told her about his experience in Orochimaru's custody and insisted the exam would be easy. He passed with flying colors and was promoted to Special Jonin. He also accepted an apprenticeship with Tsunade, his godmother. The council erupted into debate, with advisors and civilians asking that Sotaro be examined by the Center for Research and Analysis because of his abilities, but Minato's glare and warning silenced them. One afternoon, after helping Tsunade treat an Akimichi who had eaten too much, Sotaro walked through the village. He wore black Jonin pants and sandals, a white polo under a gray V-neck sweater, and a white lab coat with a dark blue stethoscope around his neck and a medical kit strapped to his back. He also wore black reading glasses. Heads turned as he walked past a barbecue shop. His stomach growled, and he decided to eat. Inside, he saw his older siblings and many of his former teammates among the patrons. He acknowledged them blankly and was invited to sit. Soter took a seat between Choji and Shino and made small talk as the table filled with chatter. After a few minutes, Ino asked about Sora, wondering who Sora was to Soter. The temperature in the room dropped. Frost began to gather at the edges of the table and along the walls. Sotaru's face hardened into cold fury, though he kept it contained. Soter told Ino that it was none of her business. She shrank back at the intensity of his reaction. Choji and Shino shivered from the chill. Soter left his payment on the table and stood up, saying that his break was over and he had duties to attend to, then departed amid a swirl of snow and cold wind. The temperature slowly returned to normal and the group continued eating in silence. A middle-rank ninja ran in, panting, and informed them that Sasuke's brother had collapsed and was in the hospital. He explained that Dr. Namikaze was with him because Tsunade was treating another teammate, and that the patient was in the North Wing emergency room with his parents waiting in the lobby. Sasuke slammed his money on the table and ran out. When Sasuke reached the hospital waiting room, he found his mother and father with Izumi. Mikoto rushed to him and wept. They had already spent 7 hours waiting. Kushina had come to comfort her old friend. The doors opened and Soter entered with a serious expression. The parents felt anxious at the thought of relying on a boy so young for their son's care. Mikoto asked how the patient was. Soter reassured her that Itachi was safe and resting, but then grew serious and explained that Itachi would be off duty for a while. He revealed that Itachi had contracted a rare chakra virus that was slowly draining his chakra and life force. Sotaru explained bluntly that the longer Itachi used chakra and the larger his chakra reserve, the faster the virus would spread. He had sealed Itachi's chakra and Sharingan to extract the infection. They had managed to remove 80% of it, but some remained. Soter had studied the case for 3 days and had resorted to an unfinished antidote. It had been risky, but it had helped save Itachi's life. Soter warned that Itachi needed rest and must not be forced to open his chakra. He admitted he was not sure he could save him a second time and said that until the antidote was complete, Itachi Uchiha was forbidden from using chakra because doing so would be life-threatening and Sotaru would enforce the restriction. Izumi thanked the doctor and asked if they could see Itachi. Soter replied that they could not enter his room yet and led them to a viewing window. Through the clear glass they saw Itachi awake and trying to sit up. Sotaru's expression hardened and he strode into the room, closing the door behind him. Sotaru demanded loudly what Itachi was thinking, reminding him that he had just come out of the emergency room and would not tolerate reckless behavior. He ordered Itachi to lie back down, and Itachi obeyed, afraid of what the 14-year-old, silver-haired doctor might do. Sotaru calmed and checked the vitals, then took a clipboard and noted his observations. Sotaru told Itachi that they had gotten him to care in time and that any delay could have been critical. He reiterated that he had sealed Itachi's Sharingan and chakra so the virus would not spread and asked him to follow his instructions and not use them. He said he was working on an antidote and promised that Itachi would return to active duty once fully healed. Soter stressed that until then Itachi was off duty and warned against trying anything behind his back, speaking with a sharp, uncompromising tone. Sotaru then added a precaution. If Itachi tried to sneak away, he would know. Ice restraints quietly wrapped around Itachi's wrists, warm rather than cold, and Sotaru said that Itachi's family and girlfriend were waiting to see him. He would allow each of them brief visits before visiting hours ended. Soter pushed up his glasses, explained that most ninja disliked hospitals so he had to use firm measures, and noted that he had chained Itachi to the bed as a precaution. He told them each they would have 10 minutes and that he would deliver his report to Tsunade-sensei, then he bowed and left. Fugaku expressed gratitude formally despite Sotaru's youth, and Kushina praised Sotaru's work. Izumi smiled in thanks, and Sasuke nodded and thanked Sotaru for saving his brother. Sotaru said it was nothing and excused himself with a bow. Later, Sotaru returned to the Namikaze household exhausted and in need of rest. He found the twins struggling over a shogi game with too many openings. He took Narumi's piece, since it was her turn, placed it in the corner to lock Menma's pieces, and won the game. Menma protested that it wasn't fair, then grinned. Minato looked up from his paperwork and asked if the operation had been a success. Sotaro replied that they had managed to get Itachi help in time and that he had used an unfinished antidote. It had been risky, but it had worked, and he was exhausted. Minato praised his work, and Sotaro removed his lab gown, folded it neatly, and set aside his stethoscope. Minato complained theatrically about the mountain of paperwork. Sotaro deadpanned, produced a small block of ice, and pressed it to his forehead to soothe his own. Minato muttered that it was unbelievable while Sotaro rolled his eyes and tried to calm his throbbing head. Kushina announced that dinner was ready, and the family responded affirmatively. Sotaro walked through the busy streets in his usual doctor outfit. He could clearly hear gossip as the crowd did not lower their voices. His feat from yesterday had spread around the village like wildfire, and many people watched him as he passed. He reached the hospital and was greeted by co-workers and nurses who welcomed him professionally. He dismissed the attention and headed straight to Itachi's room, which was occupied by Itachi, Kakashi Hatake, and Sasuke Uchiha. Sotaro's eye twitched at the sight of the orange book, but he took a few calming breaths and made his presence known. Sotaro greeted Uchiha, Hatake, and Sasuke and explained that he had come to check Itachi's vitals and to ensure he was following orders, glaring at his patient. He requested that the book be put away before he would remove the holder from the room. Kakashi apologized, smiled with one eye, and put the book away, remarking that it was a good read. Itachi answered that his doctor had warned him to avoid shameless and inappropriate influences. Sotaro snorted and returned to his duties. Tsunade's voice came over the intercom, sharp and impatient, reminding Sotaro that his training session would start in 5 minutes. Sotaro reported that the medicine and potion were working and that Itachi's coils were slowly healing. The chain on his wrist would only release for restroom use but could detect deceit. He bowed and left after Tsunade. Kakashi made a light-hearted remark, and Itachi urged them to hurry. Sotaro looked at Gaara of the desert with a blank expression as the redhead stared back. The air in the room seemed to chill as Sotaro's gaze hardened. Tsunade warned Gaara to move aside or his father would be in danger. Gaara glared at her, and Tsunade admitted she did not want to escalate the situation. Sotaro formed hand signs and produced a concentrated sphere of water that disrupted Gaara's sand control. He then used an ice technique, creating a glowing snowflake beneath his feet that expanded into a 5-foot sphere. The ice formation, with 2 rough rock markers serving as eyes, engulfed Gaara and surprised the others in the room. The snow fell away to reveal a clear shell of ice with an angry Gaara trapped inside. Sotaro told Tsunade to proceed while he restrained Gaara and placed a sealing tag on the surface of the ice. Tsunade began her work, and Sotaro leaped into the air. Sotaro landed on top of the ball of ice, then walked backward away from the shocked Chunin and Sand Shinobi. Gaara tried to use his sand, but a spray of cold water made it useless again. Sotaro warned them not to test his patience as he rolled the ball away. Gaara growled that when he got out of here, his mother would come for them. Gaara was about to attack when he cancelled his jutsu, and to his surprise Sotaro simply stood there and let the sand wrap around him. Sotaro did not waver as pressure built in the sand and it felt as if it might crush him. He looked toward the ANBU who were ready to tackle the redhead. Sotaro ordered them to stay out of it and to keep the civilians away, his voice strained as sharp pain shot through him. He noticed his family staring with horrified expressions, but he shook his head and told them to back off. Gaara shrieked, demanding to know why Sotaro would not allow help and why he did not cry out. Sotaro explained that he understood Gaara's feelings. He had been through similar darkness but had refused to let hatred consume him. He reminded Gaara that he was a Jinchuriki who carried a burden to protect others, and that many mistook the bearer for the demon itself. Sotaro argued that killing to prove one's existence only confirms the demon inside and gives those who wronged him reason to fear rather than respect him. He urged Gaara to remember his humanity, to protect the weak instead of harming them, and to become the kind of person others could admire and respect. Gaara snapped at him to be quiet and tightened the hold on the sand. Sotaro winced and groaned in pain but continued, insisting that what Gaara was doing was wrong and pleading with him to stop. He coughed and spat to the side as the pressure eased. Suddenly the sand loosened and Sotaro fell to the ground, clearly in pain. Gaara clutched his head, crouched down and screamed. Despite his own agony, Soteru steadied himself, pushed through the pain, and moved forward to embrace Gaara. Soteru told Gaara to tell Shikaku to go away and reminded him that he was the jailer. The prisoner could not dictate the prison's role in his life, and Gaara needed to block the beast out. Gaara stopped screaming, trembling, and hesitantly wrapped his arms around the silver-haired boy. Gaara thanked him, and Soteru responded that he was welcome before he lost consciousness from the strain. A month later, Soteru had returned to active duty 2 weeks after his bones healed. He had been working on an antidote for Itachi and taking notes about the Uchiha while allowing himself only 2 days at home after insisting that no one train behind his back. He continued his work until the door opened and he recognized Sasuke by his distinctive hair. Soteru looked up and offered assistance as he checked his notes for errors. Sasuke asked Soteru to train him in medical ninjutsu. Soteru nearly spilled a flask of green liquid at the request and stared at Sasuke in surprise. He repeated the request to be sure he had heard correctly, and Sasuke explained that most of his clan had not learned medical techniques. After what had happened to Itachi, Sasuke said, he wanted to be useful and ready to help if the illness returned or others were threatened. He wanted to be able to save those he considered friends. Soteru agreed to teach him but warned that the training would be grueling and had to remain secret. He wanted to see the faces of the clan when they learned an Uchiha was studying medical ninjutsu. A month later, Narumi and Menma left with Jiraiya for training. Sasuke accepted Kakashi's offer of apprenticeship to avoid suspicion and spent half his time studying medical ninjutsu. A year after that, Soteru completed his training under Tsunade and gained a dark blue Byaku seal on his forehead. Tsunade was so shocked that she fainted. Kushina and Minato beamed with pride. With the aid of his Sharingan, Sasuke finished his training in 3 years and earned a red Byaku seal. Soteru had the cheek to take a picture when Tsunade learned of it. The household reacted loudly. Fugaku spluttered his coffee, Mikoto dropped her dishes, and Itachi let a dango fall from his hand in surprise. Soteru photographed their reactions and handed one to Sasuke, who smirked. Itachi expressed admiration quietly, Mikoto grinned, and Fugaku, to everyone's surprise, offered proud praise for his son. Soteru snapped another picture. Soteru informed Sasuke that he would be operating on his first patient the next day and revealed that the patient would be Sasuke's own brother. He tossed a green scroll to Sasuke and vanished in a swirl of cold wind and snowflakes. When Sasuke unfurled the scroll, a white lab gown with an Uchiha fan embroidered on the back and a black stethoscope with the same emblem materialized. Sasuke smiled. While walking home, Soteru came upon Niji Hyuga practicing the 8 trigrams 64 palms and then the Kaiten technique. Soteru noted that Niji's current Kaiten was made of pure chakra and costly in a long battle. He suggested that Niji modify the Kaiten to be wind-based so it would interact more advantageously with elemental attacks. Niji was startled to find Soteru beside him, and Soteru demonstrated his own wind variation of the Kaiten, which appeared as a white spin rather than blue. He explained that, like a Rasengan powered by wind, the technique could be enhanced or deflected by fire and conserve chakra in prolonged combat. He said he and Sasuke had tested it and found it effective. Niji asked Soteru to teach him the wind Kaiten. Soon, other students gathered to learn. Hinata joined them, followed by Kiba, Shino, Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru. A week later, Lee and Tenten arrived. Sasuke joined in the rigorous instruction. Kikyo and Maki remained under Anko and Ibiki's tutelage and could not attend. 3 days later, the Sans siblings trained with them briefly, and when they returned to Suna, Soteru sent a flesh clone to continue their instruction. In 3 months, the Konoha 10 since Narumi and Menma had not returned had learned a great deal and developed several unexpected techniques. Minato's paperwork tripled because of the pranks they played to test their stealth, but he was not worried. He had shadow clones to help manage it. Menma and Narumi burst into the village, shouting that they were back, their voices ringing through the streets. Soteru called from behind them that it was good for them, and the comment startled the twins so much they stumbled and fell. Menma complained to their younger brother, calling him a brat and scolding him for scaring them. Menma still wore his orange jumpsuit, now darker like the older style. Narumi stood and agreed that they had just returned. Her outfit still featured orange, an off-shoulder long-sleeve top with black trim, a vest bearing an Uzumaki crest on the chest and a Namikaze crest on the back, an orange skirt with black swirls, black spandex shorts, and knee-length shinobi sandals. Sotaro reassured them that he was a medic ninja for a reason, then moved his bangs aside to reveal the Byaku seal on his forehead. Both twins shouted in surprise at the seal. Jiraiya asked whether Sotaro had completed his training already. Sotaro confirmed that he had finished in 1 year and snapped a picture of their stunned faces, laughing at how priceless their expressions were. Jiraiya teased the twins that they still needed to train if they wanted to become Hokage and suggested Sotaro looked more qualified. Menma adamantly declared he would become Hokage, emphasizing his resolve with his trademark enthusiasm. Sotaro waved lazily, said he would see them around, and walked off. Narumi watched their younger brother go and remarked that he seemed even more laid back. Menma agreed. Later, Menma reacted with disbelief to someone already being a special jonin and having completed their training. Sasuke answered with a smug remark about having surpassed Menma in something he was not good at. Sasuke wore a jonin uniform with the vest open and his headband tied around his neck so his Byaku seal was visible. He crossed his arms and smirked. Kushina cut off Minato to embrace the children, exclaiming joyfully that they had grown up and reminiscing about the days when they had run around the house calling her mother. Minato and the others exchanged embarrassed looks. The mood shifted when the door opened and Tsunade entered looking angry. Sotaro followed in his jonin uniform, headband loosely around his neck, carrying a scroll and wearing an irritated expression. Tsunade started to scold Minato about the youngest child, but Sotaro interrupted to request a month off, insisting someone was dumping their work on him. Sotaro argued that Tsunade had had an extended break from village duties almost 5 months and that he and Sasuke had been left to cover her overdue work. Tsunade protested that she needed rest. Sotaro retorted that she had been away from the hospital for too long, gambling much of the time, and that he had to manage both the hospital and his students. Tsunade reminded him that he should have considered the consequences of being a teacher and the second head at the hospital. Sotaro replied that he had not expected the appointment. Sotaro insisted on taking the month off. Tsunade refused, and Sotaro snapped. A black, frost-like pattern spread across half his face, his right eye changing to gold with a dark snowflake-shaped pupil, and the room chilled as if transformed into a freezer. His glasses fell off. He warned them not to test his patience as he turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to make the tower shake and crack and send the door from its hinges. Everyone agreed that they should let him have the month off. Later, Sotaro lay in the grass and took deep breaths to calm himself. He reflected that he had almost lost his temper earlier and did not remember being that angry about anything. He usually kept his emotions in check. He sat up and watched the lake before him. When he touched the surface, frost spread slowly outward. When he removed his finger, the frost melted back into water. He smiled, dipped his palm again, and thought of a bunny. Frost formed into a small rabbit, which came to life and hopped around him. Sotaro giggled at the sight. Sasuke approached from behind and admired the scene, startling Sotaro so that he almost toppled off the dock. Sasuke steadied him by catching him at the waist. Sotaro clutched his vest and admitted that he had been caught off guard. He had been taught never to let his guard down because that was when an enemy could strike. Sasuke reminded him of that lesson with a smirk. Sotaro asked Sasuke to let him go, and Sasuke immediately released him, stepping back and looking away, his face tinged with color. Sotaro noticed Sasuke's flushed cheeks and, concerned, reached out to feel his forehead for a fever. Sasuke reacted by lightly striking Sotaro's head in exasperation and scolding him for being dense about emotions. Sotaro explained that he was inexperienced with emotional matters and felt awkward, then looked away toward the water. Sasuke sighed and rolled his eyes, saying that Sotaro was so clueless and that he did not understand what he saw in him sometimes. Sotaro narrowed his eyes, clearly confused, and asked what Sasuke meant, urging him to be specific. Sasuke smiled and flicked Sotaro's nose, then leaned in close and teased him to find out on his own, calling him an idiot before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Sotaro's cheeks turned pink with embarrassment. Fans organized a vote to choose a champion to pair with Sotaro, since Narumi and Menma were expected to arrive and Sotaru's partner would likely be possessive. Supporters submitted brief profiles to be considered for pairings. After the votes were tallied, Sasuke emerged as the winner. Plans and ideas continued to develop, but further updates were postponed until the weekend, and the organizer bid everyone farewell. Sotaru stared at his ramen, lost in thought. Kushina noticed and brought him back. Sotaru took a deep breath and exhaled. Sotaru asked his mother if he could ask something. He felt lost. Kushina asked what was wrong. Sotaru explained that an hour earlier Sasuke had called him dense and he did not understand why. Kushina asked him to describe exactly what had happened. Sotaru recounted that after his earlier outburst he had gone to Training Ground 12 and been playing with snow creations he had made. Sasuke had appeared suddenly and Sotaru had been startled, almost falling from the dock. Sasuke grabbed him in an awkward way, and when Sotaru asked him to let go, Sasuke's face had gone pink. Sotaru had worried and checked his forehead, but Sasuke only reddened further. Sasuke then punched him lightly on the head, called him an idiot, and told him that for a genius prodigy he was as dense as a brick. Sotaru had become angry and protested that he was inexperienced in such matters. Sasuke said he found him clueless and once admitted he sometimes wondered what he even saw in Soto. When Sotaru pressed for clarity, Sasuke flicked his nose, a gesture Sotaru hated. Sasuke then did something that left Sotaru even more bewildered. Sotaru protested loudly that he did not like being left without answers. The twins toppled from their chairs, Minato started coughing on his ramen, and Kushina's eye twitched as she looked as if she might throttle someone. Sotaru groaned and slumped in his chair, frustrated at being called dense. The family members exchanged glances and muttered that Sasuke might be right. Sotaru exclaimed that he did not want everyone agreeing with him. Sasuke had been dropping hints for Sotaru to pick up, only to have Sotaru grow more confused. Sasuke was annoyed at Sotaru's obliviousness. The whole village knew that Sasuke Uchiha had a soft spot for the genius yet dense prodigy Soru Namikaze. At the moment, Sasuke was away on a mission to Suno without Soto. He repeatedly badgered his siblings and Kakashi to explain what he had meant, but they refused to spoil the moment. Sasuke was determined to see the look on Sotaru's face when he finally understood. He could not leave earlier because Tsunade was performing surgery on an injured ANBU with a severely damaged spinal cord. Meanwhile, Sotaru had finished his checkup on the daimyo and was headed toward his father's office. As he rounded a corner, he felt a sharp prick at the base of his neck. His body suddenly went cold and numb. Sotaru collapsed, drawing the attention of the ANBU guarding the Hokage's office. His vision darkened into black spots and he slipped into unconsciousness. Time passed. Members of Team 7, 8, 9, and 10, along with the rest of Team 5, stood in shock as they absorbed news about Sotaru's condition. Menma asked for the information to be repeated. Tsunade explained that Sotaru had been poisoned by a toxin that was not ordinary. This poison was causing his own powers to turn on him, slowly freezing him from the inside. He had been placed in a temperature-controlled chamber. As his body temperature dropped, the chamber warmed. If his body temperature rose, the room would cool. He was in a coma and there was a grave risk that he might never wake. If he did wake and left the chamber, his powers could trigger a fatal collapse. Tsunade wiped at her eyes as she conveyed the seriousness of the situation. Sasuke froze at the news, stunned by the possibility that Sotaru might die. Sasuke immediately searched for a cure, desperately trying to apply everything he knew. Tsunade responded that there was no known cure. Tampering with his condition could spread the process or, worse, trigger an uncontrolled release of cold that might threaten the entire land of fire or beyond. She explained that Sotaru had told her little about the incident that had led to this, only that something Orochimaru had done during an experiment had provoked a reaction that had even frightened Orochimaru himself. Tsunade further explained, under confidential orders, that the danger around Sotaru tied into an ancient legend. Long before humans as they were known existed, giant predatory creatures once ruled the world. A mysterious death of a massive creature had once plunged the land into a long, frozen winter. Over time those ages ended, And life evolved through many stages, advances and calamities reshaped civilizations until samurai and then ninja eras arose. The fear was that if Sotaru's power went unchecked it might cause a catastrophe on a similar scale. The matter was classified at the highest level, and no one else was to be told. The shinobi stood in stunned silence, each trying to process the weight of that explanation. Tsunade left them to their thoughts. Narumi suddenly punched the wall in a burst of anger, furious at how fate seemed to single out Sotaru. Menma asked Sasuke what he planned to do. Sasuke, determined not to sit idly by, stormed off in search of a way to help his friend. 8 months had passed quickly. Sasuke kept himself busy researching a cure and training to stay in shape. The twins had been devastated by Jiraiya's death and had gone to Mount Myaboku to train months earlier. Sotaru remained locked in the temperature chamber, still in a coma. Kushina and Minato worried that their family was drifting apart again. The Akatsuki had moved swiftly and captured most of the Jinchuriki, leaving only the 8 and 9 at large. Then Pain attacked and left devastation in his wake. Sotaru finally woke from his coma, feeling sore from whatever training had been forced upon him. He cursed Yuki under his breath. He remembered trudging through snowy mountains for hours, nearly ready to give up when he found a cave whose ice pillars formed a natural barred entrance. A black chain of frost was shaped into a lock across it. From within, a pair of enormous eyes watched him, the irises entirely blue, pupils like black snowflakes rimed with white frost. The unseen voice inside told him that his jailer had finally visited, and Sotaru deadpanned that the line was cliché before leaping back to avoid a gleam of long, dangerous claws. The voice called him an annoying twit and threatened to kill him. Sotaru replied that he preferred to live. The voice, amused by his defiance, said it liked this jailer because he was different from the others. When Sotaru asked who the speaker was, the creature introduced itself as Yuki and claimed responsibility for his nickname, Ice Bomb. Yuki declared herself the guardian of that dimension and boasted that she could plunge the world into winter as punishment for human selfishness, though she admitted she wanted to watch events play out before passing judgment. As she stepped into the light, her form resolved into a huge T-Rex-like figure covered in frost, startling and beautiful in equal measure. Yuki said she would train him so she would not have a weak jailer and that training would serve as a pastime. Later, she sensed danger and warned that his village was under attack and that he would likely be killed if he tried to return in his exhausted state. She explained that she could put his body into a death-like state to heal it if necessary, but otherwise he would be a sitting duck. Sotaru accepted the risk. Back in the present, Sotaru avoided a chakra rod aimed directly at him and snarled as he teleported out of the chamber. He reappeared above his father's head and, displeased with a hospital gown, changed his outfit with a wave of his hand. Sparks of blue light clothed him in ice blue sandals, a white training suit with a dark blue belt, a shining necklace, and an ice blue cloak trimmed with silver frost and a snarling Yuki emblem on the back. Sotaru invoked Winter's territory and sent a surge of ice outward from the 4th Hokage's head. The wave froze everything in its path except for people. Within moments, Konoha had taken on a winter theme. Cold and mist rolled through the streets, dimming the sun. Tsunade looked at the frozen ground in disbelief. As Pain's forces pressed their assault, Tsunade rushed to the temperature chamber and found it encased in ice and ready to crumble. A rumbling shook the area and a dust cloud filled the air. When the dust settled, civilians discovered themselves sheltered individually inside small ice domes and reacted with surprise when they found themselves unharmed. Sasuke realized that the only person in Konoha with such large-scale control over ice and snow might have been the one in a coma, and now it seemed that the sleeper was awake. The ice domes melted back into water and into the frozen ground. The mist cleared to reveal the village reduced to a vast crater, with ice beginning to spread across the hollow. A cloud drifted overhead carrying a lone figure. At first some mistook him for Minato or one of the Namikaze twins, but the glittering silver hair and an ice blue coat were unmistakable. The figure hovered before the stunned crowd, arms crossed. Pain addressed the newcomer with cold fury, accusing him of trespassing and destroying the village. Sotaru answered that the world needed to know Pain. Pain replied that his reasoning was empty, accusing him of focusing only on his own suffering and ignoring others who shared that pain. Sotaru retorted that he could see that pain was not carrying the same burden, and then used Yuki's ice claws, sending multiple snow-like pillars with icy joints up from the ground to strike at the six paths. Sotaru noted that Pain wielded the Rinnegan and expressed contempt for Pain's belief system, insisting that Pain was still human and not a celestial being. Ice spears materialized around Sotaru and launched toward the self-proclaimed god, but the attack was met by an almighty repulsion that blasted them aside. Yuki roared inside Sotaru's head, insisting she should take control and teach that so-called god who was acting like the boss. Sotaru responded in his mind that no one should be killed except that one person. Sotaru formed a sphere of ice around himself and drifted into a black abyss that was recognizably his mind but different. Through a transparent wall he could see through Yuki's eyes. He watched Yuki soar and unleash a roar that tore through the mist and sent a gust of wind sweeping it aside. In Sotaru's body, Yuki crafted a bow of ice. She took aim with narrowed blue eyes that had snowflake pupils and released an ice arrow toward Pain, who stood ready with his chakra rod. The arrow glowed white and flew toward the six paths. Yuki then loosed dozens of arrows in rapid succession, but a giant toad erupted from the crater, carrying Sotaru's siblings. Yuki snarled and continued to fire at Pain. One of the six paths appeared behind her and absorbed her chakra. Her control slipped away and with it her and Sotaru's energy. As a consequence, one of the paths became encased in ice. Sotaru suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. Chakra rods had pierced him and a dark fluid seeped, but his earlier changes prevented catastrophic damage. His vision blurred and faded. Several chakra rods struck Sotaru's chest. Witnesses watched in horror as he fell from the sky. Minato flashed and intercepted his falling son, then appeared next to Sasuke and Tsunade. Sasuke reacted with desperate fury and, together with Tsunade, removed the chakra rods. Tsunade confirmed that there was no heartbeat and looked away in tears. Sasuke refused to accept it, his eyes spinning with the agony of his eternal Mangekyo. Kushina wept against Minato's chest while he let his own tears fall. Narumi and Menma trembled with anger as they felt their youngest brother's life force fade until his presence could no longer be detected by their sage mode. They launched an attack fueled by grief and a desire for revenge, not noticing frost forming on their bodies that deflected the chakra rods sent their way. Sotaru's body began to glow a soft blue. A transparent form of Sotaru stood and smiled. Another similar figure with sunny blonde hair and bright eyes emerged from the body as well. Together they grasped the fallen body's arms and from it released a silver-haired female spirit wearing a dark blue coat, matching sandals, and a dark blue crystal tiara. She scowled as she appeared. The three spirits exchanged grins and nodded to each other. The transparent forms moved through the crowd. One spirit, carrying a warm expression, touched Nagato's chest and a frost-like sigil formed briefly before dissipating. Nagato's wounds seemed to heal as a surge of energy passed through him, leaving him restored. The female spirit, Yuki, approached and reached toward Nagato's eyes, but her hand passed harmlessly through him. Yuki asked Nagato to be grateful and acknowledged that, despite her resentment of his self-proclaimed divinity, she was thankful for him. Naruto stepped forward and placed his necklace into Nagato's hand, asking Nagato to give it to Sasuke and to tell him that Sotaru was a fusion of Naruto and Yuki. Naruto also asked Nagato to tell Sasuke not to brood and to focus on his duties, and to pass along that he was loved. Naruto and Sotaru then approached the Namikaze twins and embraced them. Sotaru and Naruto conveyed their final messages to their family. They thanked their older sister and brother, asked them to tell their parents they loved them, and requested that Nagato and Konan be accepted rather than pursued with vengeance. They asked that no one seek revenge and that Sasuke be told about their love. They placed a small snow globe containing their pictures in the twins' hands as a keepsake. Yuki addressed Konan and Nagato directly, offering 2 dark blue lock pendants and asking that Konan open a chest box when they reached Konoha. Yuki explained that the pendants would offer protection and serve as a key to bring them back when needed, urging them to keep the items safe. When Konan asked why she had been chosen, Yuki provided no real answer and simply turned away. It was time for them to go. The three spirits nodded, embraced the twins, and then disappeared in separate bursts of glittering blue sparks that were briefly drawn into the chest before it closed. Nagato expressed condolence for the twins' loss. The Namikaze siblings acknowledged the shared pain. They understood because Nagato and Konan had also lost someone like a brother. Menma admitted that the wound still hurt, his voice breaking as tears fell. Nagato offered to help in any way he could. A paper bird landed and scattered into the air, and Konan and Nagato steadied the twins' trembling shoulders. Many shinobi remained on guard at the sight of the Akatsuki cloaks, but the Namikaze twins shook their heads calmly as the two removed their cloaks and stood simply as allies and mourners among the village. Konan wore an indigo dress with white ruffles at the hem, a white belt with 3 paper origami decorations, dark blue leggings, and ninja sandals. Nagato wore a maroon sweater with an Uzumaki symbol on the back and sleeves, black high-ranking ninja pants, and sandals. The garments had formed from the necklaces that rested at their throats. They nodded to each other and burned their Akatsuki cloaks before the gathered people of Konoha, who gasped in surprise and awe. Nagato apologized for attacking and explained that he was no longer a member. He acknowledged the many lives lost and vowed to bring them back. He formed hand signs. His purple eyes morphed into the infamous Rinnegan as he activated a technique called Renni Rebirth. Most of those who had died returned to life, but Satoru remained motionless. Nagato frowned, looked at the chest, and sighed. He said he could not bring Satoru Namikaze back, that he could not reach where Satoru now was, and that not even the Rinnegan could restore everyone, including their teacher Jiraiya. He clenched his fist in frustration. Konan reminded everyone that Satoru had entrusted them with protecting Konoha in his place, and that the necklaces and the chest were proof of that trust. The chest glowed and opened. 7 rainbow-colored lights shot upward and spread across the ruined village, melting the ice and repairing buildings until Konoha looked as it had before the attack, though a faint frost lingered on walls and rooftops. The 7 glittering colors gathered around Sotaru's body and pulled it from Sasuke's hold. The body hovered, dissolved into white lights, and joined the colors back in the chest. The chest closed, shimmered, split into crystals, and the fragments flowed into the necklaces of Konan and Nagato. Nagato asked if the other warrior was Sasuke. Sasuke answered only with a glare through his eternal Mangekyo. Nagato ignored it. Nagato showed the necklace Satoru had always worn and said Satoru had left a message. To do his duty, not to brood, and that he loved him. Menma added that their younger brother had told them not to seek revenge against the two responsible and to treat them like one of their own. That had been his only wish, and they should honor it. Most people had accepted Nagato and Konan. Some only tolerated them because of Konoha's snowflake's last wish. A few remained wary and a small number still harbored resentment because they had once been Akatsuki. The two had shared what they knew of the Akatsuki's motives and insisted they did not know who Tobi, the masked man, truly was since he had never revealed his face. Danzo and his root had attempted to eliminate both of them and seize the Rinnegan, but someone had intervened and killed Danzo. It was Sasuke, who had learned that Danzo had poisoned Satoru. When the Namikaze learned of it, they were furious and disappointed that they had not been the ones to catch Danzo first. At a secret hideout before the 5 Kage summit, Minato brought Nagato and Konan with him and left Itachi Uchiha in charge of the village. The 3 of them departed for the meeting where all the Kage would discuss their plans and courses of action. The war loomed over the nations. Orochimaru appeared at the Leaf's gate with 3 individuals and announced his intention to join the Leaf and help in the coming war. Orochimaru explained that there was no point in opposing Konoha. They had once held his best test subject, Satoru, and although Satoru had been lost, he would return. He added that Kabuto had switched masters and attacked his base, and he had come with loyal followers to claim revenge by aiding in the war. The newcomers introduced themselves as Suigetsu, Karen Uzumaki, and Yugo. 4 small glittering orbs emerged from Konan and Nagato and surrounded the 4 newcomers. People relaxed when the snowflake necklaces on their necks confirmed they could be trusted. Everyone wore such a necklace. It served to protect and to reveal lies, ill intent, or imposters, as had happened before with the White Zetsu. Tsunade frowned and observed that Satoru trusted Orochimaru. Karen explained that Soto had a calming presence at the base and helped steady everyone. Suigetsu snorted and teased that Mother Hen might be a better name. Orochimaru, clearly annoyed, hissed for them to be quiet. A sound came from the chest that appeared before Konan and Nagato. It glowed and opened. A single large orb emerged, expanded, exploded, and separated into directions that would carry it to the other hidden villages and smaller settlements across the elemental nations. When the war began, the Allied forces assembled, the Allied shinobi force alongside the 3 previous Hokages against the Edo Tensei and then the looming threat of Obito and Madara with the Ten Tails. At the moment the battle was to begin, the necklaces all glowed. Each necklace turned into a sparkly orb and gathered in the sky, forming a gigantic snowflake. The chest also glowed and became an orb that joined the others. Sasuke's necklace, once Sotaru's, transformed into the final orb and completed the snowflake. A massive, dazzling blast knocked everyone off their feet and nearly unseated the Ten Tails. When the light cleared, the battlefield had been frozen and glittered under the moonlight. But behind the Allied shinobi force something else loomed huge and as imposing as the Ten Tails, with blue eyes that bore snowflake-shaped pupils and watched like a predator. A terrifying roar rolled across the frozen field and shook the ground beneath them, and everyone braced for what might come. A familiar voice then rang out from the creature's head. Sotaru stood atop the colossal being, glowing with a soft blue chakra reminiscent of Kyuubi mode but patterned with black snowflakes and frost designs on his cloak. A dark blue diamond marked his forehead. The gathered shinobi shouted his name in astonishment. Sotaru smiled and explained that he had lost track of time while in hibernation. Sotaru asked after Yuki. Yuki smirked, glowed in the same hue as her Jinchuriki, and confirmed she was ready. Sotaru's tone grew cold as he declared that he would deliver those who had harmed his home to the Shinigami himself. A thick mist rolled in and covered the battlefield. Wind users tried to clear it, but Shikaku and Inoichi pointed out that the mist served as a smokescreen. They warned that the mist was designed to mask presence and blunt the senses, functioning much like the hidden mist technique. The battle raged for hours. Then, after one final roar, silence fell. The mist receded and revealed a landscape transformed into a winter wonderland of ice pillars and frozen spears. On the tallest pillars stood a white, gigantic T-Rex-like guardian. It roared once more as the sun peeked over the horizon. The 9 tails manifested and bowed their heads in respect to the goddess of ice, the deity of the 4 seasons, and her young heir. The towering creature gave one last roar and then seemed to dissolve into blue ice and crystals. Sotaru reverted to his normal form and raised his hands. The ice and snow around them melted and gave way to soft green grass and returning trees. Rivers refilled and life returned. The sky cleared to blue with white, fluffy clouds. The battlefield shifted toward a peaceful, almost paradisiacal scene. Sotaru addressed the gathered beasts and shinobi, explaining that these creatures were guardians born of nature, beasts drained of chakra, creatures misunderstood, and the fruits of power that had come from the land of the living. He declared that he would grant their wish, a chance to be normal and free. As the heir to the judge of the dimension, a position granted by Kami and a representative of their nation, Sotaru told the gathered beings that he would grant their wish if they gave permission. The tailed beast chorused its acceptance. Sotaru invoked the celestial release, body shifter, and released 9 orbs of different colors. The orbs struck the tailed beast with a burst of radiant energy, then glowed and condensed until they transformed into 9 human bodies. The 9 bowed,